My neighbors are such douchebags. What is going on, homies? My name is TheJongasm, and I really wish that I could go back in time and stop 15-year-old me from choosing that username. Also, the subject of discussion for today is Star Wars, specifically another Star Wars theory. Today, we're talking about why everyone in the Star Wars universe uses blasters as opposed to traditional ballistics firearms that we know and use here in our galaxy. I mean, obviously, if lasers exist in the Star Wars universe, then bullets have to too, right? I mean, they're pretty much connected. Like, lasers are just a more technologically advanced form of bullets, and you can't just get from point A to point C and skip point B. Bullets are a stepping stone towards lasers, unless you actually believe that when the Star Wars galaxy first started out that they went from using swords and shields to laser guns. I want you guys to keep in mind though that this theory is looking past the obvious fact that Star Wars is a sci-fi movie, and sci-fi movies use lasers and other explanations of that nature. No one's trying to refute the fact that it's a sci-fi movie, and no one is saying that sci-fi movies shouldn't be using lasers. It's just that today we're looking at Star Wars in the most realistic and practical way possible, almost as if the events that we see in the saga really did happen a long time ago and take place in a galaxy far, far away. Okay, first off, let's list the obvious reasons why lasers would be the preferred weapon over the ballistic type that we're familiar with. Because I'm not trying to deny that there are good reasons, there just aren't really any reasons that can't be refuted. So reason number one, you don't have to reload energy weapons. The trade-off though is that they do get overheated. However, despite what EA claims, combat in the Star Wars universe does not happen like it does in Star Wars Battlefront. As we see multiple times throughout the movie, warfare is a lot more organized than it's presented in-game. Realistically, most soldiers are probably going to be aware of when their weapon is close to overheating, if they even get to that point. In addition to that reasons, blasters also have kill and stun settings. This makes it easier for the blaster wielder to use an appropriate amount of force depending on the situation. Think about in the beginning of episode 1, if these stormtroopers didn't have stun and kill settings on their blasters, the situation with Princess Leia may have played out a little bit different. Or think about if they had ballistics weapons like we have here on Earth. They would have either A, had to try to shoot her in a non-lethal spot, which very well could have missed because stormtroopers are known to miss and they could have killed her. Or if they decided that they couldn't shoot her because they didn't want to risk it, they would have had to chase after her, tackle her, the situation would have been probably more sweaty and had more bruises, and that's just kind of annoying. And for the third reason, there's the obvious fact that blasters don't run out of ammo. Now, disclaimer, I don't know if that's technically canon, but if we're going to consider what we've seen in just about every single Star Wars game to be sufficient evidence, which I personally do, then I feel like that claim has some weight behind it. Also, there isn't a single point at all throughout the saga where any of the characters says, I need to reload or I need a new weapon. So what I'm trying to say by listing off all those reasons is that blasters do have their benefits, and I'm not trying to discredit them. However, even with all of these pretty sensible reasons justifying their use over ballistics, the benefits of using traditional firearms seems to far outweigh the benefits of using blasters. So now let me list off some reasons why blasters are the worst option. First off, unlike bullet firing weapons, the shots that come out of blasters immediately cauterize the person they hit. This means that they're less lethal. Admittedly, a blaster shot can take a soldier out of the fight for a battle or two, but in the long run, getting shot with a blaster doesn't necessarily mean you're gone for good. Now, I realize that the same thing can be said about regular bullets, but the difference is that blaster shots don't actually tear through the skin. They leave a pretty serious burn mark, and I believe they do some internal damage, but a bullet can tear right through an artery or right through an organ and can leave the soldier that was on the receiving end of it laying on the ground, dying and bleeding out and kaput, essentially. Also, think about this, lasers travel slower than bullets. Think about how many times in the Star Wars saga we see people literally duck under a blaster shot. It's so easy that even Jar Jar Binks is able to do it, and if you don't consider the Darth Jar Jar theory to be true, that makes the feat even more ridiculous and therefore proves my point even more. Outside of Neo, I don't know how often I've seen someone duck under a bullet. So tell me, why would a weapon that has a higher chance of only taking soldiers out of a fight temporarily and fires slower moving projectiles be the preferred option. It just doesn't really make sense. Unless there's a reason we're not considering here, an explanation that doesn't necessarily have technological roots, but historical ones. So think about this. With the expanded universe almost completely wiped out, we don't really know anything about the history of the galaxy that Star Wars takes place in. So maybe at some point in the Star Wars universe, bullets were actually used regularly like they are here on Earth. Then one day, technological advances occurred and lasers were invented. After a short amount of time of using laser-based weapons, the galaxy realized that bullets were more effective, but they were less humane. Someone who is pure evil and bent on genocide may want to use bullets, but when it comes to standard warfare, lasers were just about as effective and were far more humane. Because like I said before, blasters have stun and kill settings. The projectiles fired from them move slower, so you're less likely to get hit. Wounds made from the blasters immediately cauterize, so you're not going to bleed out. According to this theory, the main reason that laser-based weapons are preferred over traditional bullet-firing weapons is because the Galactic Senate made a Geneva Conventions-like code, where using bullet-firing weapons was considered a war crime. So now if you're wondering why dark side factions don't use bullet-firing weapons because they're the dark side and why should they care, think about this. The Empire are a form of government and they have an appearance to keep up. Even if they're pure evil, they can't use a weapon that's considered to be inhumane and a war crime by everyone in the galaxy. I mean, they have the Death Star and that's not humane in any sense, but most people didn't even know about the Death Star. And the First Order, which could be considered to be more evil by some, doesn't use bullets because it's not economically feasible. At this point on the timeline of the galaxy, and this could be true for the Empire as well, anybody who's manufacturing weapons are manufacturing laser-based weapons. Outside of maybe like the space black market, no one is going to be manufacturing weapons that aren't allowed to be used. It's just not good for business for anybody. And even if the Empire or the First Order did go to the black market, there's no way they would have enough weapons to supply a whole army. And also when it comes to both factions, sinking huge amounts of money into planet-destroying super weapons means you had to have sensible budget cuts elsewhere. If you're looking for the too long didn't watch version, here it is. Bullets were used, then lasers were invented, so they weren't, and even though lasers were less effective, bullets were considered inhumane, so the Galactic Senate made a Geneva Conventions-like code saying that bullets weren't allowed to be used anymore. And now nobody uses them because they're out of circulation and they're too expensive to manufacture. And that, my friends, is why blasters are used in the Star Wars universe. What do you think? Make sure you leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below and hit that like button if you liked this theory. In fact, as a special treat, if this video gets to 500 likes by the weekend, I will give you guys an extra video next week that is also Star Wars related. I already have one picked out, it's almost written, and I think you guys are gonna like it. Remember, when you're done with that, you can also share this video on Facebook and Twitter using the share button down below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to see even more in-depth fan theories about the Star Wars universe. And as always, I've got links to my social media accounts in the description down below. Go give those a like or follow if you're feeling like being a super fan. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will be seeing you very soon. May the Force be with you always, and here's hoping your vidgasm wasn't too messy.